Are you suffering from a bulging disc and you're hoping for ways to help it get better as quickly as possible? If you are, then this video is perfect for you. Hi everybody, my name is Harlow and I'm the Over-Fifties specialist physio here at HT Physio in Farnham. And today we're going to be talking about 7 common mistakes that people with disc bulges make that stop their problem from healing as fast as it should. Now, before we dive into the content of today's video, if you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, because then you'll be the first to hear about our new back pain, sciatica and disc related videos as soon as they come out. Now that that's been said, let's talk about disc bulges and the common mistakes people make. Now, disc bulges are super common injuries. They usually occur in the lower back and they can cause problems like back pain and sciatica, which is pain down the back of the leg. It can also cause pins and needles and numbness, and in some cases, weakness in the legs as well. And if you want to have a quick look at the anatomy of what a disc bulge looks like, so this is a cross section of the 2 lumbar vertebrae right at the bottom of the spine. So you've got your 2 bones here. And in the middle, we have a disc. A disc is like a flexible thing that allows us to bend and twist. And in some cases, when we bend, we can develop these disc bulges, which can come out of the back of the disc. And in unlucky circumstances, they can sometimes press on a nerve, which you can see there, and that can cause pain in the leg, like sciatica. Now, super common problems, lots of people get them. Most people who get them won't actually have any pain with them, so they won't even know they're there. But some unlucky people do get pain. And for those people, it's really important to know how to help that problem get better as quickly as possible. Now, in my work as a sciatica specialist here in the clinic, I commonly see lots of mistakes people making when they come to see me, things that they hadn't even considered that they're doing wrong that stops it from getting better as quickly as possible. So let's talk about the 7 most common mistakes people make and how to avoid them. Now, the first mistake people make with a disc bulge that stops it from getting better as quickly as it should is not sitting properly. Now, when you have a disc bulge, I'll use my spinal model to demonstrate here. What usually is the case for about 80-90% of people, if they bend, that makes the disc bulge feel worse. So they won't like bending forward to pick things up from the floor. If you've noticed that when you bend, your sciatica or back pain gets worse, you fall into this category. Now, what people don't consider is that sitting, which is the act of rounding the pelvis so you can sit on your sitting bones, looks a lot like bending. Okay, so sitting and bending are pretty much the same movement. They both involve what we call spinal flexion, which is putting that spine into a flexed position. Now, obviously, we can't avoid sitting altogether, but we can avoid some types of sitting. So the worst type of sitting when you have a disc bulge is slouched sitting. Okay, this is where my back is rounded, I'm sunk back into the chair, my chin's poking forward, my bum is tucked underneath me, and my lower spine loses that natural C shape. It goes into a curve. Now, this puts all the pressure on the front of the disc and forces the bulge out towards the back. And at the back of the disc, we have the nerves. So if your disc bulge is coming out the back, it's going to press on a nerve and make the problem worse. So number 1 is don't slouch when you're sitting. You should sit upright. Number 2, to help you with this, is to make sure you're not sitting on very soft seats. The softer the seats are you sit on, the more you sort of sink into them, the worse that flexion becomes. So sofas are not a great idea. Much better are hard chairs like dining room chairs with a nice firm back. And then the final piece of advice I have on this point is to exaggerate this natural C shape in the lower spine. That helps with what we call recentralizing of the disc bulge. And one fantastic way to do that is to get a rolled up towel, like this one here, and you have it rolled up into a cylinder, that kind of shape, and you just put it at your lower back. So if I was sitting on this chair, I would have it sat back here like this. So it pushes my back forward, it pushes my stomach forward, and it helps the discs to stay as central as possible within the spine, and it can help with disc bulge healing. So that's the first tip I have for you, is to make sure you're sitting properly. Now, the second mistake that people with disc bulges make that stops them from getting better as quickly as they should is they stop walking. Now, for many people who have a bulging disc, walking becomes very painful. It can make the back pain feel worse, and sometimes it can make the leg pain feel worse as well. So they think, well, walking is painful, so I just will stop walking until this gets better. Now, although this can sometimes help with the pain, if you stop walking, it takes away one of the key stimuli that helps the disc get better. So to help a disc get better, the research shows we need to be doing weight-bearing exercise like walking. If we're not walking, we're not sending signals to the right area of the body that healing needs to occur, and healing will slow down. The body won't expend energy on healing things that it thinks you don't really need anymore, okay? And walking is a great way to send a signal to the spine that we still need these discs, and we're weight-bearing through the spine, we need a healthy spine. So if we stop walking, we take away that stimulus. Now, if walking is very painful for you, I'm not saying you should just walk through the pain. What you should do instead is you should choose very short walking distances and make sure that you stop before the pain gets too bad. Find a place to either stop and lean forward, or to stretch backwards, or do whatever makes you feel better. Pause for a few minutes and then get started again. So don't stop walking. You'll lose your muscle strength, you'll lose your core stability, and you'll lose your spinal mobility if you do. So don't fall into the trap of thinking that stopping walking is a good idea. Now, the third mistake that people make when they have bulging discs, and this is super common, is they start stretching their hamstrings. Now, I made a video about this specifically. You can see that in the top corner of this video right now. But basically, when people have a disc bulge, it often causes pain down the back of the leg that we call sciatica. And that can often feel like a tight hamstring. So what people do is they think, well, it feels tight, so I'll stretch it and that will make it better. Now, the problem is, if you stretch a nerve, it's not the same as stretching a muscle. If you stretch a muscle, that usually helps it. But if you stretch a nerve, that will make it worse. It will make the inflammation around the irritated part of the nerve much worse. So we definitely need to avoid stretching the hamstrings. I would highly recommend my video that gives you all of the stretches you need to avoid to make sure you're not stretching the hamstrings and not aggravating the nerve. The common things people do is they lie on their back with their leg and they lift their leg up like this. That's a no-go. They also stretch their leg out in front of them and they lean forward. Again, that's a no-go. Those are some quick sort of examples of hamstring stretches, but my other video has more details on that. So don't stretch the hamstrings if you have bulging discs, even if it feels like it's the right thing to do. Now, the fourth mistake that people with bulging discs make is they don't drink enough water. Now, staying hydrated is obviously general advice that everyone gets from their doctor, and we all kind of roll our eyes and think, yeah, we know we should drink more water. But when you have a bulging disc, this becomes doubly as important. Now, if you look at my disc model again, you can see that the disc in the middle of these vertebrae is very flexible. So if something within the body is flexible, it often means it's filled with fluid. And fluid, obviously, is made up predominantly of water. So if you look at the research, it shows that our discs are about 95% water. So they have a huge water content. Now, the problem is, when we become dehydrated, our body looks for areas inside the body with lots of water, and it tries to draw water away from them to give the additional water to our vital organs. It sees the discs and says, there's loads of water there, let's divert that away from the discs and we can give it to other parts of the body. Now, when your discs are losing water, they become flattened, so they lose their height. And what that leads to is a worsening bulge. So if you're dehydrated, your disc bulge will feel worse, and it will also get better slower. So make sure you're staying hydrated. Drink at least 10-15% more water than you normally would when you're suffering with a bulging disc, and that should help you get better as quickly as possible. Now, the fifth mistake that people with bulging discs make is they take too much bed rest. Now in the 1980s, this was the advice that you'd get from your doctor. If you had a bulging disc or sciatica, they would say, right, 6 weeks of bed rest and that should sort you out. And for many people, that did improve the pain. But as soon as they got up and started walking again, they were weak, they'd lost their core muscles, they'd lost their glute muscles, and before long, the sciatica came back worse, about 10 times worse than they had it before. And this happened over and over and over. It wasn't until about the 1990s that we started to change our advice and realised that bed rest is actually the worst thing you can do for a bulging disc. Yes, it might feel nice to lie down for a bit, and yeah, you should lie down if you're in lots of pain, but you shouldn't stay there any longer than you need to. The new research shows that staying moving, doing things as normally as you should, as you can normally, is the best way to get it better as quickly as possible. And if you're not exercising, if you're not being active, if you're not going to work, you are going to delay the recovery time for your bulging disc. So it's very important you don't take too much bed rest unless you need it for short periods. Now the sixth and very, very common mistake that people make when they have bulging discs is they persevere with painful exercises. Now I see this one all the time. People come to see me with a bulging disc and they say, Will, I've been doing these exercises on YouTube, or I've been doing these exercises that another physio gave me and they hurt like hell, but I just keep persevering through, but it's still not getting better. And the thing is, a bulging disc and sciatica is not a game of no pain, no gain. In fact, if you make the thing sorer, it's going to take longer to get better. Now, a bulging disc is basically a process of inflammation around the nerve root. So when you have a disc bulge, basically it's pushing out the back like this, it's touching the nerve root, and in response to that, the body pumps a load of inflammatory chemicals around that area. So we have a high level of inflammation in this zone. Now, if we're doing exercises that hurt, the reason it's hurting is probably because it keeps making that disc bulge come out. And every time it comes out, you get another boost of inflammatory chemicals, which we absolutely don't want. These inflammatory chemicals slow down healing, they make the pain feel worse, they make you stiffer, they make the muscles tighter, they make the nerve more irritated, and it just becomes a horrible, vicious circle. So the golden rule I have for sciatica exercises is that they should not be painful, and they definitely shouldn't make your pain feel worse. So what we look for is exercises that aren't painful at the time, exercises that aren't painful in the hour afterwards, and exercises that you feel significantly better after in the 24-hour period after you've done them. So that's the golden rule for finding the right sciatica exercises. And the biggest mistake people make is not listening to that. They're making their problems worse by choosing painful exercises. So the right exercises will be different for everyone, but make sure you avoid ones that hurt, because that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Now, the seventh and final mistake that people with bulging discs make, and this one might surprise you, is they spend too long obsessing over their MRI results. Now, when you've had sciatica for a while, it might be tempting to go and get an MRI, or you might have a doctor recommend you get an MRI scan. And that can be a good thing, because it can show you that the diagnosis is correct. It can show you what's happening in the spine. Now, the problem is an MRI scan is the most comprehensive imaging technique we have. It shows up absolutely everything in the spine. So for 99.9% of people, the MRI results will come back and show multiple problems at multiple layers in the spine. It might show a bulging or a herniated disc on one level. It might show degeneration of the facet joints on other levels. It might show that you've got a flattened disc on a different level. It might even show a fracture in the spine. Now, this might surprise you, but all of these results can also appear in a normal, healthy spine. There was research done by a group of researchers who scanned 1,000 people with no back pain and no sciatica, and they found results like these on almost everybody. At least 90% of the people they scanned, and this is people from the age of 20 up to the age of 80, they all had at least one thing on the MRI scan which looked abnormal. So just because you've seen some things on the MRI report that look abnormal or they look like they should be the cause of pain, try not to fret over them, because those things might have been there for a long time. All the MRI scan should do for you is reassure you that the initial diagnosis is correct. No matter how bad it looks on the scan, as long as there's nothing serious going on, and your doctor will be able to tell you if there is or there isn't. If they've said, look, this is happening, and it's just a case of persevering with what you're doing, try not to obsess over what's going on there, because whatever it is, it's probably very common in the general population, not just those with pain. Now, the other thing we find is that sometimes people can have their sciatica go away, but the disc bulge looks the same on the MRI. We don't quite know how that happens. We know that the body is way more complex than we understand, and we just try and fill in the gaps where we can. But don't obsess over what's on that scan, even if it looks really scary. The analogy I like to use is that when you put your back into an MRI scanner, it's like taking your car into a Formula One garage. They're going to find problems with it, but the car still works. That's the same as your spine. The MRI scan is going to find problems with it, but your back still works fine. So if you persevere with the things that work, you avoid the things that don't, and you keep yourself moving, for 95% of people, bulging discs and sciatica do get better within a reasonable time frame. Now, I've got other videos showing you more details about bulging discs, how long they take to get better, and what you can expect. Most people can expect their bulging discs to get better within about 12 weeks. For some people, it takes 6 months, and that would cover the vast majority of people. For 5% of people, it goes on for longer, and for those people, they need more intensive care. Some people need surgery, but not many. So don't worry, if you're early in the stages of having a bulging disc, follow the advice that you get from your professional, follow the advice from sensible videos like this one, and it'll give you the best chance of getting better. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. I hope that's been a useful video. If you've enjoyed this video, please do pick up a copy of my book. It's called Thriving Beyond 50, and it has loads more advice about back pain, bulging discs, and sciatica within it. Anyway, that's all I've got today. If you found this useful, please leave a comment below, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next one.